Thank you very much, Marcella. James, it's a privilege to be here at RTRS in Utrecht. I think it's been an excellent forum and many more people attending than I expected. So just very quickly, Ecometrica, for those of you who've not heard of us, we're a UK-based business, well actually Scottish-based. We sometimes, with all the Brexit going on, we want to emphasise that Scotland is very pro-European still, and we're a business. We monitor millions of areas of interest using a combination of satellites, aerial and ground data, and data provided by clients themselves. We produce reports on vegetation change, including deforestation, greenhouse gas emissions, and uptake, water scarcity, fires, and a few other things like that. So, you can obviously visit our website if you want to find out more. But I thought I'd thrill you all with a picture of the Tipper household fridge door to see what I think is a sign of the future. Those of you who have, well, it's not just a youth thing, but I think some of these things, it's an interesting data point. 10 years ago, we would have just had cow's milk in the fridge, and okay, maybe an extra bottle of wine. We're trying to cut down on the wine. And what we have instead is a number of other sort of dairy substitute products, and particularly the Alpro soy drinks. And this is, I think, part of a megatrend, I would say, that there is young people all over Europe certainly are reducing their meat consumption and consumption of meat-based products and moving more towards plant-based products. And I think this is a sort of a signal. It's partly due to environmental awareness, health issues, but I think those kind of things, while they might start with an ethical view, become embedded in people's tastes and in people's habits. And I think it's fascinating to see, even as a household, while I'm not personally vegetarian yet, our meat consumption as a household is reducing, but we are probably consuming soy more directly. And therefore, as we're consuming it more directly, we're probably more interested in where it comes from and what the sustainability issues are around it. I think this is all around the mega issue of climate change, which is going to affect soybean production and many other agricultural, all agriculture, I think, in terms of the impact of climate change on the production systems, but also what is demanded of agriculture. I'm sure diets will change as a result of those consumer demands. Let's not also forget that the soy and other agricultural systems are also massively affected by pests, diseases, and in the case of soy, animal health. The big outbreak of swine flu in China at the moment is having a major effect on the pork production there and therefore the demand for soybeans. So these kind of megatrends are challenges that I think they're somehow related, and they will continue to play a huge role in the future of the soybean markets that will affect the initiatives like the RTRS. I think another point I wanted to bring across was where to set standards is something I came across in some of the discussions yesterday around how financial institutions are looking at this and how different institutions are. And I think I've seen this mirrored in a number of standards, particularly I was at the launch, I remember I think it must have been about 30 years ago, of the Forest Stewardship Council around certifying sustainable timber production. And I was interested to know when you have a standard, whether your aim is to really signal out the top producers and really kind of, if you like, recognize that only the best kind of initiatives and really point out that high end of sustainability, whether it is to eliminate the worst practice or indeed whether it is to try to move the whole distribution of practice along over time. And I think if we want to scale up RTRS, which I'm sure is really the aim in the long run. We need to really address the whole of that distribution curve of all the producers, not just the ones at the top right. At the end of the day, the environmental conditions, we can't leave out those producers who are working in areas where there are forests that they may not be currently taking care of. So through whatever mechanisms, and I do appreciate that it's complex, I do believe that these initiatives must address the full scope of all producers eventually to make progress. I think part of this is to try to view this as an opportunity. And there are many different opportunities. Not all of them come exactly to fruition. I was doing some background research on this, and I'm noting that there is a big growth in the new products based around soybeans in terms of solvents, coatings, new sort of plastic replacements, new uses of feed in say, new markets in aquaculture and things like that. So not everything comes to fruition. This was Henry Ford in 1941 wore a suit made out of soybean material. He actually invested quite a bit of money to try to get soybean-derived fabrics launched, but it never actually became viable. But it was interesting to note that innovation is something that has been going on for a while. And I think this with today's advances in materials science, I think these kind of things will continue. So I think that there are big opportunities out there for new products. I think production innovation is obviously continuing. I think one of the interesting things is whether soybeans through genetic modification will and breeding, both GMO and conventional breeding will lead to specialist productions of more oleogenic or more let's say, varieties with specific characteristics for specific end markets, and that will be something that we'll no doubt see over the next 10 years. The other thing, and this is really at the farm and the landscape level, is I'm convinced that within the next 10 years we will start to move to incentives towards increasing the sequestration of carbon on agricultural land. And this means that I think people within the soy sector who are already, if you like, not losing forest, I think we'll actually move into the state where we will sequester additional carbon through restoration of some areas that have maybe been lost in the past 20 or 30 years. I think there are some amazing opportunities for biodiversity in connecting up some previously isolated areas. As you know, that connected ecosystems provide much better biodiversity characteristics. So I think where we're moving the idea that we're trying to defend the negatives in a supply chain to really enhancing the positives, and I think that will be the trend over the next 10 years. One thing that I think will be essential for all these things to happen is that these opportunities, in order to grasp them, to realize them, they are bigger than any single institution. So they will require collaboration, and collaboration is what RTS is all about. And I think this kind of fora is a great example of how we can get that collaboration going. As Marcelo has said, we have representatives from right along the supply chain, from finance, production, processing, and end markets, and those will all need to work together. So I think I would commend you all to continue that spirit of collaboration, and I hope we're able to realize some of those opportunities and those benefits. Thank you very much.